Coming up, it's parents, not kids, that are dreading going back to school. And surprise, there's corruption at immigration.
You're listening to Brent's 2 Cents, the semi-serious thoughts of a guy in Belize. And now here's the host of this podcast from somewhere in Belize City, Brent Toombs.
Hey, welcome to the podcast for the week of July 20th, or as I call it, the 20th day of Rumspringa.
Rumspringa!
I can't get enough of that clip. I'm sorry. I just love it. If you don't get the reference, check out a movie from 2009. It's called Sex Drive. Don't let the title fool you. It is one of the funniest movies from that era. Watch it for no other reason than to see Seth Green play this uber sarcastic Amish guy. It's absolutely hilarious. But anyways, on to the podcast. You know how completely upside down everything in 2020 has become? For the first time probably ever, it's parents that are dreading the end of summer vacation and the return of school for kids. Up till now, most of the attention in Belize has been focused on August 15th, the day the PGIA is set to reopen. But the other date circled on the calendar of anyone with children is August 10th, the first day of the new school year in Belize. There is a lot of concern being expressed by parents about sending kids back to school only 5 days before passengers begin arriving at the international airport. A completely unscientific poll conducted on my social media pages suggests that 2/3 of respondents think it's not safe to open schools yet. The concern, obviously, is what could happen after August 15th if people arriving in Belize import more cases of COVID-19 and we start to see a spike in infections in the wider community. And of course, there's our own homegrown problem of border jumpers returning to Belize with much more than just contraband goods. So the fear of exposing kids by sending them to school is real, and it's legitimate. Late last week, the Ministry of Education unveiled some of the measures they will be taking to make schools safer. Those include smaller class sizes, physical distancing between desks, regular cleaning and disinfecting of classrooms, and improved sanitation facilities. Those common sense safety protocols will help. And maybe schools will be as safe as anywhere in Belize, hygienically speaking. But what happens if the number of infections begins to climb quickly, even if schools do not experience clusters of infection? Our experience from March and April taught us that the quickest way to contain the spread of COVID-19 was to lock things down as much as possible. So if we start seeing new infections, as most people expect we will, don't be surprised if schools are closed once again in the next few months. So I agree that August 10th is not the best date to send kids back to school. But I don't think it's too soon. I think it's too late. I believe that schools should have reopened on July 1st, maybe even as early as June 1st. We should have been taking advantage of this period from mid-May until mid-August when COVID-19 posed very little threat to Belize thanks to aggressive and decisive action from government and the Ministry of Health. We have been living in a bubble of relative safety while the virus has raged all around us for the past 2 months, and we don't expect that bubble to pop for at least another month. But if we find our schools once again closed by the end of September or earlier, we will regret the fact that we squandered the last 3 months when we could have been educating our children. Students have been out of school since March 20th. With the exception of a few private institutions that offered online classes, the majority of kids have been on vacation for 4 months. Yes, it would have been a scramble and a bit disorganized to try and have butts back in desks by June 1st or at the latest July 1st, but it could have been possible. School managers and education administrators could have been sorting out the way forward while classroom teachers were taking advantage of these precious days to actually teach. The mission should have been to cram in as much learning as possible while at the same time preparing for how to respond when, not if, the order to suspend in-classroom education comes once again. Online education is one option, and yes, not every student in Belize has access to computers and internet, but we need to break this culture of not doing something just because it won't be accessible to everyone on day one. provide service to those who do have computers and internet, and then focus on how to accommodate those who do not. Even if we can only reduce the number of students that need to physically congregate in a facility in order to receive instruction by, say, 40%, well, we should do that. And then look at ways to bridge the digital divide for the rest. For example, small groups of students in mostly empty classrooms or other safe facilities, physically distancing while receiving their lessons from an online teacher for even an hour or two each day. All you need is a monitor, a computer, and a set of speakers to safely teach 10 or more children at a time. Then send them home with assignments that can be dropped off and new work picked up at a safe location later. Digicel, our publicly owned telecommunications provider, could create a system where mobile internet is available for free for students for certain periods of the day. So yes, not everyone has a computer at home, but there are even fewer homes where at least one person does not have a handheld device capable of accessing the internet. Another option we should be considering, and for many other reasons I believe is something long overdue even before the pandemic, is switching to a year-round school calendar. If our national response is going to be to push the pause button on everything each time the number of COVID-19 cases begins to accelerate, then we should plan for a school year that has a number of month-long breaks built into the schedule. Now, the difference during a pandemic is we don't know exactly when those timeouts will come. So we need to make as much hay as we can while the sun still shines, and take breaks when the health situation requires it. Like I said, all of this would be a bit messy and everyone involved would be flying by the seat of their pants to begin with. However, with a little imagination and a little less rigidity, we could figure things out as we go along. But simply trying to start the school year a few weeks earlier than normal and expect the year to go along like normal in a time when nothing is normal is not going to work. If we are going to have to learn to live with COVID-19, then we need to rethink how we do everything. And simply putting in a few more hand washing stations and stocking up on cleaning products is not enough.
We want to hear from you. You can find Brent's 2 Cents on Twitter and Facebook at 2 Cents Belize, or email us at podcast@oxaproductions.com. That's OXA Productions with an S.com.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system.
Hi, this is Brent. Thanks for calling the Your 2 Cents hotline. Please leave a message about anything you want to talk about after the beep.
Hey Brent, thanks for episode number 2. I really enjoyed it. I think that 3 things that the new Belize government that wins in November or anytime in February 2021 need to address is crime, corruption, and economy. Can you elaborate and expound on these 3 things that I think the country needs to address as soon as possible?
Personally, I think the August 15th date is rapidly deteriorating as a safe reopening date, especially since our visitors come from the US and the US continues to be struggling to even flatten the curve of their first wave. So perhaps it should be pushed back, like someone had shared, into September, or maybe at least after the September celebrations.
Hi Brent, this is Carla Husner. I just want to share my thoughts on the airport reopening. Just based on what I'm seeing in the US, I'm thinking that it's not going to be the panacea that everybody in Belize is hoping it's going to be. I am wondering what kind of numbers we're even going to have. Our flights, our main hubs are in cities that are all having a huge resurgence. Miami is a hot spot, the ground zero in a way. The Belizean diaspora community is having problems in all of their cities. The other issue is masks and enforcement. Are we really going to arrest people who are refusing to wear masks? I went to Key Crocker the other day and a bunch of people on the water taxi were not wearing masks and they were right in front of the captain. he said nothing to them. Would he say something to a bunch of visitors? Will Belizean police arrest tourists and charge them a $5,000 fine? What's going to happen if that occurs? That's just my 2 cents. Bye.
Thank you so much to those listeners for being the first to call in and leave a message for your 2 cents. I really hope this can be a regular feature on the podcast, but I can't do it without you. So please send me a voice message on WhatsApp about anything you want to talk about. You will find a direct link to my WhatsApp number on the Brent's 2 Cents Facebook page. In September 2013, the Wong Hong Kim scandal broke in Belize. Kim, a South Korean national, had received a Belizean passport while in a Taiwanese jail awaiting extradition to Korea on charges of embezzlement. His naturalization and subsequent issuing of a Belize passport was personally attended to by then Minister of State with responsibility for immigration, Elvin Penner. Penner would eventually lose his cabinet position, but he remained in the House of Representatives until the 2015 general election. In 2014, the Supreme Court of Belize had to issue a directive to then Commissioner of Police Alan Wiley to do his job and investigate Penner for criminal wrongdoing. A perfunctory investigation was performed at the 11th hour before the statute of limitations was about to expire for Penner, and to no one's surprise, charges against Penner were dropped due to lack of evidence. The fact that the Nationality and Immigration Department was a hotbed of corruption had been one of Belize's worst-kept secrets for decades. But the sheer brazenness of everyone implicated in the Kim scandal, how little effort they made to hide their dirty deeds because they felt entitled to operate with impunity, was finally too much for ordinary Belizeans to accept. Shortly after the Kim affair, Auditor General Dorothy Bradley presented the findings of her special audit of the Immigration and Nationality Department from 2011 through 2013. It contained page after page of highly irregular practices in the granting of visas and nationality. A Senate Select Committee then began an inquiry into the Immigration and Nationality Department during that same period. Over the next 13 months, the Senate heard testimony from well-connected fixers who charged as much as $6,000 to assist their clients with the facilitation of visitor visas. Another lower-level operator testified that she paid government ministers $2,000 per letter of recommendation for visa applicants. When summoned to testify before the Senate, many of the people that had been implicated in wrongdoing or were witnesses to impropriety simply said they could not recall, or refused outright to answer questions. One infamous character even went so far as to suggest that he might be having trouble with his memory due to recent brain surgery that he had in Corozal. The details of said surgery he also could not recall. Finally, this week, nearly 3 years since the conclusion of the inquiry, the Senate Select Committee has finally presented its findings. And to no one's surprise, it suggests there has been corruption at the Immigration and Nationality Department. The question now is, will anything be done about this? Or more specifically, will anyone be made to pay for their crimes? The report will be forwarded to the Director of Public Prosecutions, who will, in due time, direct the police on whether or not anyone should be criminally charged. My guess is that answer will be no. Another lee breeze will blow, and life will go on for people who see immigration and nationality as just a commodity to be sold on the black market. Now, why this bothers me so much is that I've had my own personal experience with corruption at Immigration and Nationality. On October 7th, 2011, I was sworn in as a citizen of Belize. It was the culmination of 3.5 years of dealing with the Immigration and Nationality Department. 3.5 years of being told that they were still waiting for my file to come back, or that suddenly there was some new document that was never required when my application was first received, but now was the reason why the process had come to a halt for me. Meanwhile, I would see news reports of fast-track citizenship for political convenience. One well-connected political operator even offered to hook me up if I would agree to vote for his candidate in a party convention in a division where I did not live. I declined, I was determined to become a Belizean legitimately. It was frustrating, sometimes to the point of me seriously giving up and just remaining a permanent resident forever. But in my heart, I already felt that I was a Belizean, and damn it, I wanted the passport to prove that. Finally, I got the phone call that the Minister of Immigration had signed my nationality application, and I was invited to the next swearing-in ceremony. If you have ever attended or participated in one of these swearing-in ceremonies, you will know that it involves a lot of lining up and a lot of waiting. But I had just done 3.5 years worth of waiting, so what's a few more hours? But what I witnessed on that day is that not everyone is forced to wait. Inside the George Price Center, amongst the 60 or so of us waiting to become new citizens of Belize, was a well-known, affluent American couple from San Pedro. They were in the company of a fixer, or should I say, immigration broker. And in plain sight of everyone, they filled out their application form. The very same form I had completed 3.5 years earlier. Their broker then disappeared into the room where immigration officers had set up shop to have applicants sign their affidavits that their applications were honest and truthful. A few minutes later, the broker emerged with good news and told his clients that they needed to go get some photos taken before lunch. Those photos would be affixed to their nationality certificates that would be printed and signed by the minister just in time for the official swearing-in ceremony that same afternoon. I wanted to say something to them. I wanted to tell this couple how much I resented that they were buying their citizenship in plain sight of people like me who had followed the procedure to the letter. The journalist in me wanted to alert the media of corrupt activity occurring right in the middle of what should be a sacred ceremony. I wanted to give the Minister of Immigration a piece of my mind for what was happening right under his nose. But most likely, the only one who would suffer from my public outrage or whistleblowing would have been me. I had waited far too long, been far too polite, and put up with far too much bureaucracy to blow it now. So I kept quiet, and I did nothing. On the day that I became a Belizean, I did what too many other Belizeans are expected to do every day. I tolerated corruption out of fear that I would only be making my life harder by doing the right thing. Hey, let's wrap up this podcast with a little bit of good news. At the top of the show, I spoke about the apprehension that many people have about sending their children back to school this year. Well, for the parents of nearly 2,500 primary school students, at least there is one less thing to worry about. Late last week, the Lifeline Foundation held a press conference to announce that they will be paying the tuition fees for students at 20 primary schools throughout the country. That represents a total donation of just over $150,000. Now, if you're not familiar with the Lifeline Foundation, it's a philanthropic organization of service-minded women in Belize who have raised over $1.4 million since 2004. That money has gone directly to schools and other projects that improve the lives of the most vulnerable children in our country. Their biggest fundraiser of the year is a lavish gala, which due to COVID-19 had to be canceled this past March, which makes this donation of $150,000 at a time when it is so desperately needed all the more remarkable. So way to go, Lifeline Foundation, and thank you for this bit of good news. And before I go, I want to tell you about yet another Belizean podcast that I've really been enjoying. It's called Change the Narrative. It's a podcast by Kim and Clinton Lamb Fuller, a Belizean couple who live in Atlanta. Now, you may be more familiar with them as athletes. Kim was an elite softball player who represented Belize internationally, and Clinton Lamb Fuller was a member of the Belize national basketball team for many years, including the 1998 CARICOM Championship. They host a podcast that talks about issues in Belize, but offering a unique perspective from Belizeans living in the United States. But don't let their location fool you. Kim and Lamb are completely dialed into what's happening right here in Belize. Completely. Each episode is about 30 minutes long, and they have such a great rapport with each other. Listening to them makes me feel like I'm having great conversation with friends. There are about 20 episodes of Change the Narrative waiting for you on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, so you definitely want to subscribe to this show. You can also find video clips as well as full episodes on their Facebook page, so search out Change the Narrative next time you are on social media. And that's a wrap on episode 3 of Brent's 2 Cents. Don't forget, you can hit me up with comments on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at 2 Cents Belize. I'd love to hear what's on your mind, and especially encourage you to leave a WhatsApp voice message that I can play back during next week's podcast. The link for that is on the Facebook page for Brent's 2 Cents. Be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can find Brent's 2 Cents on all the major platforms such as Apple iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Castbox, Podcast Addict, and YouTube. By subscribing, you make sure that you never miss an episode. Just set it and forget it. When you wake up each Monday, this show will already be on your device, and you can listen to it whenever you feel like it. And finally, if you enjoy this show, please help spread the word about Brent's 2 Cents. Recommend this podcast to just one person who otherwise would not know about it. That's how you can help grow the audience for this show, which will motivate me to keep doing this labor of love I call Brent's 2 Cents. Okay, until next week, stay safe, wash your hands, wear your mask, and most importantly, be nice to each other.
Brent's 2 Cents is a presentation of OSHA Productions, Belize's affordable professional video production company.